Is it time for recess yet? I'm so glad you found time to join us here on the Childcare Director's Chair, where Erica Sacoccio shares her best practices that she's refined through her passion of directing childcare centers over the last 23 years. From parenting interaction, systems to save you time, money, and stress, to profitability. She shares it all from the Childcare Director's Chair.
Hey there. I know as a childcare director, compliance is one of the areas that many people struggle with. Even if you're on top of your game, things are always changing in the industry and your staff change. And there's lots of different factors that can put you out of compliance in a second. So don't let that be you, because being out of compliance can cost you your license, money, time, and not to mention the stress. So today we're going to be joined with Tony D'Agostino from InspireCare360. He's going to share with us how they can help you relieve all of the compliance issues and have everything in one place to make sure you're on top of your game. So we are back today with Anthony D'Agostino, and we are going to learn a little bit more about how InspireCare360 is going to be able to help your business thrive. Lots of things are changing right now. We've been having changes for the last couple of years, but there's so many more changes, I believe, on the horizon for all of us. Some positive, some negative. I think mindset definitely plays into it. So be prepared. I think that would probably be the best way that I'd say that as a childcare owner myself. We have to be prepared because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Erica. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and be part of this.
Yeah, thank you. So tell folks a little bit who are not familiar with your company, how you started, what made you start, this Inspire360 company.
Yeah, not a problem. So InspireCare360 was born out of a little bit of necessity. I started getting into the childcare business back in 2011 when I acquired 6 schools. And that was in Western New York. So I come by this rather authentically in the sense that I have and I continue to be an owner-operator of schools. Within doing that and being part of that, like yourself, Erica, I recognized there were areas that I had strengths and there was areas that I had opportunities to grow in, and started to speak to a lot of different owners, not only in our region, but across the country. I was going to conferences and events like a lot of us do. And you start having conversations at lunch or at a breakfast over a coffee. And I started seeing a common thread that the majority of people in the industry, a lot of them don't come from a business background. Many of them come from an educator background or very much of the care side, like they were maybe an in-home center that started and, they were just beloved locally, and then they went into their own schools and created, a number of different schools, and they did very well. So what we started recognizing was there were a number of things of really focusing on what was it that was a bit of the secret sauce to help people get, a very efficient center that was profitable, but was also of high quality. And so we started to look at a number of the different things that are out there and realized a lot of us as owner operators have to oftentimes outsource because we just don't have the funds to have our own HR department, our own training department, our own PR department, our own marketing department, our own purchasing department. These are all things that as owner operators, we have to repeat over and over again for many different owner operators to identify who should we work with. So I thought, what if we were to create a model that created a membership and allowed people to subscribe to it sort of as part of a community that they could take advantage of solutions that would be best of breed, sort of world-class solutions in those different areas to help your staff get up to speed, to help you have the very best possible brand and reputation in the community, and then to optimize your profitability. I'm a big believer that everything starts with your staff. And I won't go into it because I'm sure, when we go in podcasts, I could keep on rambling on, but at the end of the day, I think that we were really starting to focus on what my background was much prior to me getting into the childcare business was about talent, talent sourcing, talent development, managing through the entire life cycle, as well as marketing, as well as the opportunity to look at how do you drive the right type of business elements to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, that's so in line with what we talk about here on the Childcare Director Share podcast. Like, people are definitely the number one thing that is going to drive your business to be successful, because a building is just a building. And I see it all the time. I do not have the fanciest building on the block. It is my teachers. It is the talent. It is the way that you take care of your people that helps you be successful, you know?
Yeah. And Erica, I would say I would much rather be walking into your school that has that caring and that warmth and the people who are all aligned as to the big box center that has all the pretty colors and, the mascot and all that. It looks brand new. I'd much rather have the first than the latter, though, because
Yeah.
that's where my child's going to be taken care of.
Yeah. So, what do you feel like has been the biggest, especially around compliance? What do you feel like has been the biggest trip up for centers? Where do you see that in terms of compliance?
Oh gosh, when it comes to compliance, there's so many different things. Well, one thing is we know compliance they only add to, they never take away from. So that, for those of us who remember.
Hey, it's Erica here, and I've got something super exciting to share with you. If you're in the world of early childhood education, you cannot miss the Early Childhood Empowerment Conference. And I'm not just saying that. Trust me, this is where the magic happens. Over the course of 3 days, we're all about learning, connecting, and reigniting that spark that brought you into the field in the first place. And let me tell you, this conference is packed with goodness. Day one is all about leadership. We've got 5 incredible presenters who will walk you through the business side of running your program. Plus, it's more intimate, a retreat-style day with only 80 administrators, so you'll get tons of face time and an opportunity to connect. And to close out the day, a fun, hilarious comedy show and dinner with Jay Yoder from the Board Teacher Comedy Tour. He graces the stages all over the country. Day 2 is a day full-blown conference with 50 vendors, 14 amazing speakers, plus 2, not 1, but 2 keynote addresses that will leave your head full of fresh ideas. Oh, and did I mention, you can also get a free professional headshot. You can even hop on an ECE podcast and share your expertise with the world. So much fun packed into one day. And then day 3, you get to relax. We're heading over to Urban Sweat, where you can treat yourself however you want. Whether you want to unwind in a Himalayan salt cave, you want to get into a yoga class, or just enjoy a relaxing massage, you will leave totally recharged. You can book your services directly with Rafa and pick exactly what you need. So are you in? Don't miss out 3 days of empowerment, inspiration, and just pure connection with your ECE community. I can't wait to see you there. So let's do this. Links below. See you soon.
We used to have these things called phone books. And these phone books, for some generations, are like, what's a phone book? I only have it on my phone. But our state regulations are becoming mini phone books oftentimes. They just have pages. Some of those pages are on the low end around 70 or 80, but some of them go into the 200 or 300 pages. And then what you're asking for is you're asking for your teammates, whether it be administrators and directors or assistant directors or the staff themselves and the owners and operators, to be up to speed on everything in those regulatory compliances. Quite oftentimes, compliance has the right intention. And I will say this, whenever I was working with Erica, with friends and CEO groups that were outside of this industry, they go, wow, after I tell them some stories that go on in our industry, they're like, well, how do you even do this? And I'd be like, well, I'll tell you this. believe it or not, one of the benefits is actually compliance. And for all of us who out there going, oh, compliance is the bane of my existence. We're having licensors come in and we get violations or whatever. The great thing about compliance is it gives you guardrails. It gives your business guardrails so everybody who comes in, they know the rules they have to play by. Imagine if we were doing childcare without compliance.
Yeah.
It would be like the Wild West. It would be crazy out there. Kids would be, there would be no safety standards. There would be no errors. Does compliance overstep? Of course they do. That's what government likes to do, is overstep. But that's where we need to have a voice and advocacy too within our industry to make sure that we push back appropriately on compliance.
Yeah. I think as I talk to directors all across the country as well, I feel like where some folks get tripped up if you move from one state to another, the regulations can vary so greatly. Even things like ratios, right? Some states the ratios are super high, others are low, and certainly when you're looking at it from a profitability, because I'm up north on the East Coast, so ratio is almost like 1-to-1 at this point.
That's where my schools are too.
Yeah, right.
Infants that are 4-to-1 down here, but then you go or up there. And then you go down south and you have like 8-to-1 for the exact same classroom for an infant classroom.
Yeah.
It does have a lot to do with profitability, with recruiting,
sure,
managing through that. So there's a lot of dynamics that your regulations.
Yeah. It was so, I went to a lodge conference and I was meeting with other directors, and I don't even think it occurred to me how vast and the difference was, between different states. Yes. So why do you think there's a growing need for tools like InspireCare360?
Well, so there's two things. There's InspireCare360, which is the company that offers a number of different solutions. We offer things such as 200 plus hours of continuing education, professional development for staff, as well as courseware for staff to be better with the kids. And we offer HR services and star rating. The thing that I think you're sort of getting to is one of our solutions called Ask Reggie. AskReggie.ai is an AI tool that we built, and the primary reason at first that we developed it was to get speed to access for compliance issues. So Ask Reggie was born out of necessity. As AI has started to develop, AI has been around, believe it or not, since the 1940s. Okay, but people are like, well, wait a minute. I just started hearing about this now. I just started hearing about ChatGPT just this past year. What do you mean? Well, there's a lot of technology that has used different forms of AI in different formats. So basically it means about automating some processes and starting to have tools think for themselves. So when we started looking at what is some of the lowest hanging fruit, what could benefit this industry the most in the vast array, and pretty much it is around supporting the requirements and the needs of compliance. Not only do group centers, but in-home, if Head Starts, if you work for the childcare for the Navy, all right, they all have to deal with compliance issues. There's no one who is licensed who doesn't have that requirement. So we started going, well, what's the real issue when it comes to compliance? And usually it's finding the right answer on demand. As we know, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, Erica, too, is you have a licensor who comes in and they interpret your licensing and your regulations one way. And you're like, well, that's not how I'm reading it. I'm reading it a different way. And we all have the same intention. It's for the safety of the children. But quite oftentimes, I will look at some of those compliance regulations and I will see a lot of gray area. And due to that, it makes it difficult for directors and administrators to sometimes make those judgment calls. So what do? So then they get fearful. And then they start going, well, I have to call my licensor to ask. And every 5 minutes, depending on where you are, some states, you see your licensor maybe twice a year. Other states, like where mine are in Western New York, we see them maybe twice a month. Okay, they are always coming in. And if you call and say something as simple as, hey, we have to have a refrigerator now, you told me, in my infant room, but I need to put an extension cord. Can I use an extension cord for that? Well, you could look it up in the regulations, and it's a little bit vague, possibly. But then what happens is you say, okay, so I'm going to call my licensor. So I call my licensor, and I ask him or her that question. And well, they'll say is, well, you know what? I'm going to come out and take a look. So the next day, your licensor comes out. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to do an inspection while I'm here. Oh, you didn't have a cover on your trash can.
Yeah.
Well, that's hazardous material, and hazmat will have to be flown in tomorrow to take care of your issue because you don't have a cover on your trash can. And obviously, I'm exaggerating. But it is one of the challenges is you don't want to raise a flag every time you're trying to do the right thing by staying in regs to have your licensor come out for a visit just because you have a question. So how do you get to the information quicker, faster, sooner, and as accurate as possible? That's why we developed a tool like Ask Reggie.
Yeah, you know what is great too is sometimes you have to cross check, right? So your perfect example of the extension cord, that may not be something in your childcare regs, but it might be something in your fire code regs, right?
Yep.
So you have a whole nother, right? Because we have multiple agencies we have to adhere to. So that could be a great way too to just cross check references.
Oh, absolutely. And, depending on the schools, there's different regs that come up. Not only our general regs that we probably look at, whenever we need them and a couple times a month, but there's also memos in some states. There's addendums. There's updates that are always being released. And a lot of times it's easy to miss all of that. So one of the things that we've done within Ask Reggie is we've captured all of those elements. So not only is it your standard, current, up-to-date regs, for whether you're in a group home or a group center, I should say, or in-home, or maybe you're in a school age program. And depending on the state, you may have different regs for each one of those programs. I'm in New York State with my schools, and we have a different one for each one of them. And not only that, downstate, I'm in Western New York, by Rochester, New York. But downstate in the boroughs, they also have all different kind of regs in addition to that down in the 5 boroughs in, Manhattan, Staten Island, what have you. So they have a whole additional list of things that they have to go look at too. When you come down to some place like Florida, Florida has additional regs based in different counties that you're in. So it is, right now it'd be wonderful for us to all go by the same regs throughout all 50 states. But right now that's probably not going to happen for a number of years.
Well, think about too when you have a company like yourself, and I have multiple locations too, but luckily they're all in the same state. But how does that impact your onboarding? Because then you're having to do different types of onboarding for your staff if the regulations or rules are different in one of your locations than a different location. So you must have to, think about that when you're doing your onboarding, right?
Yeah.
So,
and when you think about it, if you're a company that's, they get a little larger in some of these franchise companies or these multi-location companies that not only have 3 or 4 locations, but, they start getting up to having 30, 50, 60 locations. Then you have like a regional manager who's trying to coach and work with directors across state lines. But every time they change from New Jersey over to New York, or if the people are in Colorado, vastly different regs. So they have to be up to speed in all these things. So they're not only looking at one phone book, they're looking at 5 or 6.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, and I do want to talk about a couple of the other things you have on your website, because I was on your website and it looks fantastic. But before we move on to a couple other things I want to ask you, what would you say your 5 top tips would be for a new childcare director who's listening now, in terms of preparing themselves to be in compliance as much as possible?
It's a really good question, Erica. One is it's difficult because if you're new to the industry, if you haven't grown up in the industry, and even if you did, even if you were maybe an assistant teacher and you made it to a teacher and then you were tapped on the shoulder and asked to get into management, there's education you have to go through. And sometimes that education is formal through colleges or universities, or you can get some of it through CDAs and the like. But when you look at what are the top things that you should do is first one is take a deep breath. Okay. That, as they say, you don't, not that we
Breathing
should
is
be,
good.
yes, exactly. Not that we should be eating elephants, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You try not to do it all in one sitting. And so the thought is when it comes to regulations, I first back that up. It's not so much about the document. It is about with your licensors. Try not to make the licensor your enemy. Try to make the licensor your partner in your business. And you can do that as simply as having an open, authentic discussion with them. Because you may disagree, or you may have a licensor who comes in heavy-handed with you, doesn't mean that you have to take the same profile to be heavy-handed back to them. Mm-hmm. Learn what is important to your licensor of what he or she is trying to achieve with you. Are they big into giving violations? Are they about technical support? Do they like to have other people come in and help them out? Do they want your school to run in a certain way? These are all available questions to almost interview your licensor up front and understand what is important to your licensor. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just say, well, that licensor is going to treat me a certain way and I'm going to treat them a certain way back. Nope. You want to have that person. They may not be your friend, and that's okay. They're not supposed to be, but they are, in a way, a partner in you having a successful center. So one is building and fostering a strong relationship. Two is, if you don't have access to a tool like Ask Reggie, which everybody does now because there is a free beta test going on for a good period of time, but you should print out your regulations. You should print it out and you should be keeping it as an administrator. You should be keeping it with you in a binder. So let's say, for instance, you've just left because you came in at 6 a.m. and you ran the front end of the center, and it's 4 o'clock. It's time for you to go home. You have an assistant director who's going to close you out by 6 o'clock. But then you get a call from a teacher, and the teacher's asking you about a reg. And you are in your car. Well, what do you want to do at that point? So the second thing I would say that it's really important is you could pull over to the side of the road. You should have a binder that has your regulations right then and there. Now, some of us can have electronically on our smartphone device or whatever. Of course, I'd say pull over again at the side of the road. But having quick access is important, all right? And the important thing is, too, when it comes to your regs, is consistency. So the third item is look at how you are applying each one of your programs to a consistent model according to your state. Now, I'd love to say there is some kind of model that works out great. Some states address each one of the programs separately and any of the licensing requirements against that. Other states don't. Other states have just general licensing, all right? So I would look at how do you identify and you start to look to applying things consistency. What I mean by consistency is not just reactive. It is going in and looking at your school and identifying where are issues of what I would call softness when it comes to regs. These are areas that you may either have questions or concerns or identify that, I'm not sure, and really try to get to the bottom of them and then making sure you're proactively applying those. That leads to my fourth thing with consistency is training. You should be having ongoing staff meetings and having an interactive training with your teammates. Okay, so if they're your infant, toddler, preschool, pre-K, UPK, whatever your programs are called, or school age or summer camps, even with your cooks you may have, your bus driver, what have you, it's important for you to share with your entire team what are the important regulations, what are the things that you've received violations on the past with, what are you trying to achieve, and have your staff, don't be there, one of my backgrounds is really about learning and development. And if you sit there like a talking head and just tell people things, their retention level is going to be 5 to 10%. But if you have your team in a staff meeting, maybe they get you give them out a topic on a sticky note to a bunch of different staff members and say, okay, I want you to look up the regs and you give us what you think is the right reg from here. And you get them interacting with the regs, and then they're presenting to the rest of the team, and then they're getting feedback. Now they're knowing why. They're understanding. They're being part of the solution. So I would say that's the fourth issue. And then realistically, the fifth issue is to stay up to date with them. Regs do change. And I'm even going to give you a sixth one too, but stay up to date when it comes to your regs. Make sure you have the most recent regs. Make sure that you as the director are basically the one who is in charge of making sure everybody on your team and even your owner knows what new regs are. Regs can significantly affect number of things that go on in your school, from ratios to the size of classrooms to what you can use in a classroom, what you cannot use in a classroom. You could have overnight something change where, like we had at one of my schools, is like, okay, everybody has to have a refrigerator in the infant room. And all of a sudden, so I have to now buy 3 new refrigerators where I had one central refrigerator before. Mm-hmm. That could be a big expense. So, and the last element really is to, when you think about when you're working with your state regs, is being thorough, making sure you are understanding what you're processing and understanding what you're doing when you are trying to make decisions. Again, things are vague. So if you don't have a tool like Ask Reggie, you likely will have to reach out to your licensor and ask them about it.
Yeah. I'm going to add one to it. One that's my favorite is do your own compliance visits.
Oh, absolutely.
I asked our worker if we could have a blank form, which was exactly what the workers used. And so I do it, and then I also train my assistant directors to do it. And 2 things happen. One, it helps them have that eye of what are they looking for when they come. But 2, it also makes your staff feel a little bit more relaxed, because people get nervous when the workers come. Even if you're doing the right thing, there's just this sense of authority and makes your folks a little nervous. And I found that the more that we did our own compliance visits and had, conversations around it, the more comfortable my team got with them. So I would say, for the love of your staff on top of your business. But, when you do that, it really does help break down some of that fear of having people in the room watching you with the clipboard, staring at you, writing things down.
What you bring up, Erica, is really important. I'd even go the extra step, and I'm glad you told the audience that. I'd go the extra step of possibly looking at having some team members, like your toddler room teacher, maybe going into your infant room.
Yes.
And for them to look at what the regs are for infant. Vice versa. So it's important to sort of cross-train them too, and maybe have them go in and do the licensing visit, so they understand what is being sought after.
Yeah. And that's so great too when you do that, because like your infant students will be moving into that toddler room. And so the expectations change, things change. So again, just talking about having a cohesive team, that's how you do it. Those are just some examples. So before we go ahead.
One thing, if you don't mind,
No.
You brought up something else I think is really important, and that's intimidation. I've seen time and again where licensors, whether they wanted to or not, will intimidate teachers. They will put the fear of God in them, mandated reporter. That's what it's called in some states, not in all states, but elements where you must call in. You cannot talk to your administrators. You must make this call, or you must call CPS, or you might make these calls. These are a lot of things that can scare people like crazy. And you have to realize as a director that your team can get scared really quick. But the more things you do of those practices like Erica's talking about, I think gets you very well equipped. So when you're dealing with the real life, they know this is far from the end of the world. This is just part of the process.
Yeah. So that, folks, is just some examples on how you can really stay in compliance and feel good about it and feel like you have some control over it, right? You don't wait for the day for someone to knock on your door with the lanyard and then think about compliance. Think about it on a regular basis, but be proactive, and then you'll feel like you're more in charge of it. So there are so many great things on this website that I think we need to dive into. We only have a few minutes left, so I do want to touch on some things. One of the things you had brought up about really early is profitability. And I think right now folks are really struggling with that. I mean, our margins were already so tight and they're increasingly getting tighter, right? So on your website, I saw something about purchasing power or discounts if you're a member through certain companies. Can you talk a little about that? Because I did notice WB Mason is on there and I order from them every week. So talk a little bit about that.
Not a problem. Well, when you think about it, we acquire a lot of different supplies, goods, services, capital goods, different softwares, things of that nature. And because we're not the size of a KinderCare or a very large nonprofit, nonprofits can sit right next to you and they're not paying tax on anything they buy. So it's easier for them to go to market and be a lot less expensive. The YMCA down the street or the JCC can offer their service at a discount compared to what you can offer because you're paying for your different supplies. So we built a GPO and we've had one in place now for almost 10 years. And the ability for this GPO was meant to be that 95% of our market is owned and operated by independent owners. 95%. That's huge for any industry. But that means it's like mostly moms and pops and, things of that nature. Some of the schools have obviously multi-locations. But that doesn't lend you to buying power. So even if you had 20 locations, that's still not a lot of buying power you have. Yeah. So what are you doing? So you're going to Amazon. Or you're going out and you're sending people to go shop every week. And you're standing in line with 3 carts at Aldi's and totally getting the other people in line like, oh my God, who is this person? I want to kill them. I just have about 5 items. Okay.
Yep. My life, Tony.
Yes. Trust me. We used to be there too. But the thing is when you look at schools, especially if you cook, which most of the schools out there cook, you're like little restaurants. Heck, some of you are serving 150 breakfasts, 150 lunches, and then afternoon snacks. So, you either cook, you cater, or you brown bag. But in almost in all those situations, you still have to acquire supplies. You have to have office supplies. You need to have school supplies. You need to have janitorial maintenance supplies. But then again, you're looking at buying, like today, tablets. Why do you need tablets? Well, because you're doing like daily sheets that are electronic now and you want everybody to commit. We never used to have that before. It's much more effective and efficient and expected by parents. But the fact is you need that. You also need like kitchen equipment, all these things. So what we did at InspireCare360, we said is, you know what? Let's go out there and let's be very proactive and negotiate discounts. So we went out to food supply companies, some of the largest in the country, like US Foods and Cisco, and we negotiated directly with them. And we got discounts upwards of 30%, in some situations up to 50% on food supplies. Then people are like, well, I have a small school. I don't have the ability to have these drop-off services because they want me to spend $500 every time, and then I don't have the place to put all that food. Well, we negotiated down the minimum drop-offs too. So we made the minimum drop-offs a lot less, and you can order it all online. It saves us a ton of money for any of us who do that. When you look at it and you think that you're saving, you spend maybe $3,000 a month for a school that has 100 enrollments. All right. So that's $36,000 a year. If we could save 20% on that, you're looking almost at $7,200 a year. What would you do with that other $7,200 for the exact same, if not higher quality food that's delivered to you? And instead of you, Erica, having to go out to Aldi's or your local grocery store and spend half your day shopping and getting the other people PO'd in line, the food's dropped off to you, brought right on in. So that's part of our group purchasing. That's what we do there.
Yeah. And you do something similar with healthcare.
Oh yeah. So what we did is we spent 2 years identifying, and again, this is the, invention is the mother, uh, of necessity. And the necessity has been that the childcare industry is very difficult. Low wages for the most part, thin margins for owners and operators. And whenever we brought in major medical programs that we brought in, I would look after the year and only like the director would take it, even though I offered it to everybody. And then at the end of the year, I'd say to the director, I'd say, hey, um, how did it go with the healthcare program? We have like one of the Blue Cross Blue Shield ones. And they'd be like, well, I didn't use it. And I'm like, you paid so much. I paid half of it, but you paid so much.
Yeah.
Why aren't you using it? Well, I have a $6,000 deductible. I
Yep.
can't even use $1 until I
Mm-hmm.
satisfy that $6,000 deductible. And then on top of that, my premiums are so high that it
Mm-hmm.
really affects our paycheck. So what we
Yep.
did is we went to the mat, we worked nationally with a bunch of different providers, and we identified and built a program that we would be able to do similar to the GPO since we have volume, since we have so many different members of ours and subscribers. We created a program called Healthy Advantage, ECE for our industry, Healthy Advantage. It was built just for this industry. This is highly affordable and flexible. What that means is there's 4 different program levels. So there's one that's super inexpensive, only like $45 a month, but you get your proactive wellness health care, like your
Mm-hmm.
physicals, your mammograms, all those covered in discounts on some pharmaceuticals. That really doesn't satisfy the real healthcare needs. But we have a number of other programs, and the one that we have, it's an elite program, is $15 office visits. $15 specialist visits, $50 urgent care, $50 lab work, $50 for behavioral, and then very inexpensive drugs with a formulary that is just that of any kind of major medical program, and it meets the Affordable Care Act requirements if you have 50 or more staff members.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start going, well, wait a minute. There's got to be a huge deductible. No, there is no deductible. That's from $1. And then
Wow.
there's ancillary programs such as we have dental, we have vision, we have accident recovery, we have a program for maternity, we have group health plans. So we've bundled those together. So how do you get them so inexpensive? Well, the way that we had to do it is health insurance is health insurance.
Okay.
Okay. It's expensive, plain and simple. There's no real secret sauce of getting around the expense of it. Other
Mm-hmm.
than what we did is we took these programs that are sort of like what I call a deconstructed major medical. Okay. What does that mean? Well, your major medical, the reason they're so expensive is because it's sort of a fit all. Every person gets the same program. And that's because you don't know what's going to happen with every person. So you have to charge a lot of money, but one person may have to use doctor visits. One person may have to go to the hospital. Another person may have to do this. Another person has to do this. So it's a deconstructed program. So what that means is all of your office visits that I talked about, we've been able to negotiate down to a very low rate and still have access to top doctors in your areas and likely the doctors you currently use today. But then you can add on to it like HR, hospital visits, ER visits, some other things that really are what is expensive. So you can add those on with different limits. So what this allows is it allows a lot of people who have not been able to afford it before to afford it. Because like the elite program I just spoke to you about, that's about $130 a month for an employee. But that's compared to like $400 to $500 today with a $6,000 deductible or 10,000. So
Mm-hmm.
this is super affordable. The thing is, though, we need to have at least with the programs that we work with, we do have some minimums on it, but the minimums themselves are well below what you do, even if you had one person on major medical. So I'd suggest that if anybody has an interest in learning more about that, that they reach out to us.
Mm. I'll be reaching out.
I
No, my
can't
daughter
see how
is
you wouldn't.
26 years old and she is paying $360 a month for
Yeah.
medical
Yeah.
and has pretty high deductibles and copays. And I'm like, she's 26 years old and she is super healthy. I'm like, that's insane. So before we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to share?
Sure, no problem. Well, I would say is one of the biggest things that we bring. We did talk about sort of our learning and development. All of our courseware that we've developed, we have over 200 hours of courseware, and it is viable for continuing education units in all 50 states. It meets the requirement for your foundational training, your ongoing. It's IASET approved. It is all in a platform where you're also able to develop your own content and put it on. And it's as simple as if you had a staff meeting and you used a smartphone and you recorded the staff meeting. And as we know, people are out sick, especially in the wintertime in the Northeast or what have you. People are out sick or you haven't hired people yet, but you had a great staff meeting. Now, how do you relate that to people who weren't there? Well, you could videotape that, you could put it on our platform, and then you can distribute that. You have someone who comes in, you can distribute it on that too. So you can create your own content, put it out there, and have it assigned through our platform. We recently, and we're about to introduce a courseware, especially if you're a director and you're like, I'd really love to understand how to better market. I'd really like to understand how to bring in potential tours, and then how to best convert those tours to enrollments, and then how do I ongoing delight those families. We just created a 20-hour course. Okay, yes, it's 20 hours, but also meets continuing education units for your state that is specific on how to grow your school's enrollments ongoing. And it's a very in-depth course to make you a pro in that area. So that's just one of the other things. We have a lot of other things, but you could check us out at InspireCare360.com. Or, look, we talked about earlier, Ask Reggie is at AskRegi. Ask Reggie. The reason we said Reggie is because of regulations. Reggie. So AskReggie.ai, not .com, .ai, and you can sign up there at no charge. And you have the ability to then use it right now and use it for your state licensing, and there's no charge to you. We would never start to charge you unless you decide to come on board for us once we go to a paid model. And the paid model is really going to be allowing a lot of free for the smaller and mid-sized companies, but once you get to a much larger company and there's volume, then there will be some paid cost to it.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so very, very much for being on the Childcare Directors Chair podcast. We will put the links below for InspireCare360 and the Ask Reggie. So for those of you who tuned in today, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment below. Thank you as always. Have a great day.
Well, all the cute little kiddos have been picked up and it's time to go home. And that'll do it for another episode of the Childcare Director's Chair. Please leave a review so Erica knows the information is helping you to manage and improve your childcare centers. Remember to subscribe to get the latest episode from Erica's Childcare Director's Chair.